Well, howdy diddly dandy there, chums. Whoops, I think I've made that Viking jump in the background. Whoops. Yeah, no, I'm not talking to you, my Viking friend. No, not you. I'm talking to these guys in the viewerverse, because today's video is going to be about unanswered questions in No Man's Sky. Because yes, there's a lot of questions and no freaking answers to be found anywhere right now. So yeah, come with me on this lovely adventure as we head on through this Atlas Pass free door that is locked over here. I've actually unlocked it to have a look, see if there's anything decent in there, which there isn't. Sometimes you get to find a remembrance terminal in these places, chums. But other than that, the Atlas card level 3 seems to be one of those things that don't really have much reason or rhyme to them. Rhyme or reason, I should have said. Strike that, reverse it. Heck yes. So yeah, this video is going to be a little bit like that, but also on stuff that's a bit more squiffy in the lore. Heck yes, stuff that's missing, or answers that we just don't got. For example, there is the Starbirth mission. Now the Starbirth mission brings in this alien entity type ship, known as the Living Ships. And yes, a lot of us have got these, but to get these we had to sort of melt down travelers' souls to actually build these things. And yes, they came from a void egg. They hatched from a void egg, so you can only assume that the egg came from the void. It's a frickin' void egg. It says it on the tin. This one looks like it's got sinister frickin' creepy eyes. Heck yes. And the actual storyline for these was quite sinister and quite creepy. Like I said, this thing runs on souls and has organ chambers and all sorts of other stuff that we had to put together and build like Frankenstein. Yeah, it wasn't a pleasant storyline, but it doesn't feel like it's actually finished because we never did get to find out where that ship really came from. And yes, they can just appear through a tune into our verse. Something that didn't appear through a tune into our verse is this little kitty over here. This is the Normandy ship. Okay, and this came from a completely different game. Was it Mass Effect? Yes, Mass Effect. I always get mixed up Mass Effect and Half-Life. I don't know why. But yeah, Mass Effect. Anyhow, it appeared by us going to monoliths and going to the ley lines and things like that. Now, normally in the lore, sentinels appear from the monoliths and the ley lines, or at least that's what Apollo seems to gather from the energy spikes. But we'll get to Apollo in a bit, because here's another frickin' answered question. But this question is, how the fudge did the Normandy ship end up in our space-time continuum, and why the fudge did we have to go to monoliths and all the ley lines that have sentinel references? So yeah, interesting. Another one is Ariadne. Ariadne is said to be an imposter. We done the weekend missions. Ariadne went missing and boarded a dark freighter, and this is an imposter that stands in Ariadne's place. This is not the real Ariadne. Yes, you can't kid us with those little whiskers, you imposter, you Hello Kitty faced roustabout. Yeah, and during those weekend missions we also got thrown a load of other names like Astera and Lazarus and Hildebrand and all sorts of other stuff. Other sorts of travellers' names that have just vanished into the ether, and the weekend missions now have just gone back to being just normal Quicksilver missions, but with more Quicksilver to be gained. Yeah, it's very, very odd. It feels like the weekend missions have been ditched, and it's almost like we're supposed to now just forget about everything that took place. And speaking of Quicksilver, so if you go speak to Johnny 5 over here, the Quicksilver merchant, I call him Johnny 5. But yeah, the only place that you can get Quicksilver and Quicksilver items, including the Void Egg that came from the Void, is here on the actual Nexus. And this is all sort of stoked up by Nada and Apollo and this little droid here. And they've got us running about the universe, doing all these missions for whatever frickin' reason, and they're sort of giving us this lovely little trinket of Quicksilver. It's not even a real currency. It's like working your ass off of Bitcoin. Okay, right. Anyway, there's quite a lot of NPCs up here inside of the actual Nexus as well, chums, that we just don't have any backstory for. They're just eye freaking candy, and they're beautiful eye candy, don't get me wrong, they're freaking great, but they have no backstory, no rhyme or reason. They're just a collection of travellers that seem to have been amassed by Apollo and Nada for reasons unknown. Bit odd, and they're just here to sort of serve us guys that come running in here and running around and doing what we do. It's a little bit of an odd setup. Bit strange, and it just doesn't feel like it's been finished off properly. I mean, if you talk to these guys, as beautifully crafted as they are, they've got very little to say and very little to do. And yeah, you can talk to them as much as you like, and they're just going to throw up the same sentences. There's no real they've got loads of personality, but no personality when it comes to interaction. It is such a shame. They're sublime, yet they do nothing. Yeah. So yeah, I would like to see something happen with these guys, or get some sort of question or answers as to why they're here and what brought them here. Even Nada and Polo, I'd like a little bit more backstory to those guys. Heck yes, I would. Yeah, because at the moment, bit empty, as I say. And talking of empty, chums, yeah, there's an empty booth over here. So if you just cross across this thing that looks like it's some sort of Pokemon arena, and you head over to this giant sign that has like 2 orderly queues and 2 orderly desks with no orderlies. Yeah, there's nobody actually attendance. There's nobody attending those desks. Heck no. Waste of a frickin' sign and neon lighting. Heck yes. Right, so let's head on over to the portal. Now, something else that's a bit odd is the featured bases. The featured bases used to get rotated out fairly often, pretty much every sort of patch or update. But not these 3. Heck no, they've been here for eternity now, or it feels that way anyway, chums. But yeah, it would be nice to see the featured bases rotated out and made a proper feature. Yeah, because it gives people a reason to build, doesn't it? You know, well, the building's always good fun, but yeah, it'd be nice if Hello Games was actually turning that over a little bit more often to bring in the interest. Right, now we're up with Nada and Polo. And you can ask Nada and Polo until you're freaking blue in the face, what the fudge is this anomaly and who built it? It's very hard to understand who actually built this anomaly and when. I mean, it feels to me that Polo found Nada awoken once Korvax Prime had been completely obliterated. However, it says that he awoke on the planet, and you can only assume that it's the planet of Korvax Prime, so maybe the cities got wiped out, but perhaps the actual planet still stands. It's very difficult to work it out from this janky text, because Nada speaks in very sort of broken English, and Polo seems to just like doing dances, and he never does tell you where he's got that freaking hoodie from. I love his hoodie. Yeah, and can you find out where to get that great cape that Nada's wearing? Heck no, you can't. They're 2 decent questions. Right, people out there in viewer world, I've been blabbering on for a while about all of my sort of questions. Yeah, if you've got your own questions, please put them inside of the comments. And likewise, if you feel that you've got answers to some of my questions, again, please put them in the comments. That'd be frickin' ace. Heck yes. So here it's Nada's actually saying about how the Sentinels are trying to hunt them down. The Atlas is trying to hunt them down. There we go. That's where he mentions about he awoke with the death of Korvax Prime. And then a little bit later on, he says that he awoke on the planet. He doesn't say what planet. If he said Korvax Prime, it would have helped, but he doesn't. Yeah, heck no. But yeah, the actual text here is a little bit of an odd one. I'll let you just read some of this text and I'll start blathering for a sec. You see, now, Artemis is on a planet. Artemis is on a planet without a sun. You try and find a system without a sun in this freaking game. It just doesn't happen. So I'm wondering whether it's a different sort of alternate reality, maybe the Void or the Abyss or the Realm of Glass, because they're all freaking questions I've got as well. What is the Abyss? What is the Realm of Glass? And what is the frickin' Void? Heck yeah, so we've got all these 3 references. Are they one and the same place, or are they different sort of subdivisions of reality? Who frickin' knows? I was even wondering whether this red crimson that they're on about, this red crimson sea, or the red crimson light, could be standby on my frickin' TV, you know? We're travellers on the opposite side of the Realm of Glass, on the opposite side of the TV, and maybe it's just the standby light or the power light, and we don't come into iteration until we boot up. That just breaks the freaking third wall, doesn't it? That's freaking mind-blowing stuff. But it's a possibility. It's a possibility that can't be ruled out, because at the end of the day, this actual text is so vague. It's like even the word anomaly. How often does the word anomaly pop up? I'm called the Anomaly. This big ship that we're sitting on right now talking to these guys is also called the Anomaly. The Atlas calls you the Anomaly. But are you a traveller? Are you an anomaly? Who freaking knows? There's spatial anomalies as well that you can call in. You can even get a freaking doohickey to summon those sort of things. Yeah, the word anomaly is used far too often. There we go, we're on the space anomaly. You can see it up there. I just got called an anomaly as well. Lovely jubbly. Awesome. Great. Now, in some segments of text, like when you're speaking to Nada here, he actually says that the Crimson Lyre is the Atlas, you know? So it kind of makes you think, well, every sort of mention of the crimson or anything red is a reference to the Atlas because of those passages of text that you have with Nada. But at the same time, you kind of think, well, perhaps not. Because there's mentions of nanite foam and the realm of glass, and they also mention the words crimson when they're talking about the realm of glass. So it almost feels like there's some sort of red foamy area within inside the realm of glass. It's so difficult to understand all the references of crimson. Crimson comes up a lot, and the colour of red comes up a lot. And sometimes when you get the text boxes down at the bottom here, and it says breach, 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 sometimes the text is in red, sometimes the divider's in red, and the text is in white. I don't know whether that's got some sort of rhyme or reason to it. It's like the same sort of breaks in the actual text would say 16, 16, 16 with the breaks in between, and then occasionally that'll be replaced with breach, breach, breach rather than 16, 16, 16. So then it makes you think, well, maybe the corruption was caused by a breach, or maybe the anomalies are that breach. Anyway, a new thing that's been added in is this inside of the stations. We've now got a new question to be answered. What the fudge does the override card do, or code do, in the actual station? I mean, what the fudge? That's a new one. But yeah, it keeps us guessing. It's always fun to be guessing. Here we go. So if you look at the actual console behind the actual message window right now, you can see there 16, 16, 16, 16. There's 4 16s there with separators in between them. And sometimes you only see 16 3 times with separators between them. But sometimes those separators are red and the text is white, and other times it's the other way around. You know, the text is red and the separators are white. It's an odd one that I don't know whether the colours actually mean anything. Maybe I'm reading into this too much. Who knows? And when you ask Artemis about the 16, because there's 16 people or strangers following him, which is pretty weird. This is the only time that they really mention 16 as a physical entity, or entities, 16 of them. And when you actually ask what these entities looked like, he mentions glass again, which is really mind-messing to try and understand what it is or where he is. I mean, he's in a system that has no sun, with 16 entities after him, with glass-like appearances, which is very odd. Now, sometimes when you actually look at travellers, they do look like they're made of glass. They're like a hollow projection. Now, this is Artemis standing here in the actual hollow terminus, so yeah, he looks like a friggin' hologram. But look at some of the kit that he's got. Some of this kit that's on him look like the very sort of early sort of concept art pieces that we had. If you ever play vanilla No Man's Sky, well, the actual backpack he's wearing looks just like the vanilla backpack from all the concept art, and even the menu system from back then when you entered into your exosuit or your storage capacity. But he's got a frickin' flashlight there that looks like it's from the 20th century our world. Yeah, now he does mention that he actually cut the vocal boxes of his exosuit. So he got rid of his AI droid, he got rid of his Talamon, so he looks like, or she, whatever Artemis is some sort of traveller entity just like us, or anomaly just like us, or at least that's how it plays out to be. So it's almost like an MCPC or a shadow of a player that once existed in-game. It's an odd one. Again, it's very difficult from this to understand exactly what's going on, or even what Artemis was. I feel that they were maybe a traveller like us. Maybe they stopped playing, deleted their save, and what was left over was a remnant that is what we see now. Is kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, Artemis says that they got stuck in between the portal and our sort of iteration. So what happens if there was a blue screen and a crash? Because that happens when you teleport sometimes. You know, maybe they got stuck in between realities of being in-game and out of game. Maybe it's tied into the corruption. Maybe that's why we get so many bugs and sort of hard crashes. Maybe we're supposed to. Maybe it's about all the fourth barrier breaking. Who knows? It's pretty weird. I mean, even when you're reading the text, if you read it in that context about the darkness and where this person is, there we go. We've got the white separators, red text there. But yeah, it does make you wonder whether it is that fourth barrier. And it is sort of the world of glass is our TV screens and we're the opposite side of it. I don't know. And it's like this about being awoken as a traveller and coming up from the void of the red or whatever and becoming a traveller into this iteration to explore. It does feel like, turning on your console. It really does. But anyway, I'm going to leave you a bit of this text and we'll reconvene in a sec. So during the weekend mission lore, we got reminded that all of these sort of structures, the ancient relic sites, the ancient plaques, and the monoliths, and even the portals, are all sort of conjoined on sort of like ley lines, power structures that harness them all together. And these sort of monoliths and relic sites, all these things on the ley lines that I just mentioned, have got something to do with the Sentinels being able to spawn in at will wherever they wish on a planet, as planetary sort of guardians. And yes, the actual lore actually suggests, should I really be destroying these Sentinels? Because they are there to protect the planets. If you leave them alone, they should technically leave you alone. Well, sometimes if you go on an extreme Sentinel planet, that's very not true, because they're freaking evil. But there we go. It does make you wonder, doesn't it, why all these things are tied together and why we're going to all these monolith sites. And once you do go to a monolith site and you do solve the puzzle of the monolith, it gives you an atlas word, which also makes me think that these sort of sites that we're going to are very much aligned to the atlas. So perhaps the atlas put the Sentinels into the iteration to protect the worlds that the atlas has created. In fact, I do believe there is some passages in the actual lore that suggests that to actually be true, that the atlas created the Sentinels, but then for some reason lost control of the Sentinels. Now there's other lines of text that mention that perhaps the Sentinels were created by the Korvax though. So even that has got its question mark on it. Where did the Sentinels come from? We'll touch on the Sentinels a bit. In a bit, because I'm going to talk about the Sentinels a bit, because some of these Sentinels, like the actual, the actual dog Sentinels, have got some text on that look a little bit glyph-like in a roundabout way. But the Sentinels almost look like they have got a creator other than the Atlas. And I'd even question whether they're by the Korvax, but we'll get to that in a bit. Okay, right, so you can see here that Artemis was going through a pathway within inside of a portal that collapsed and then rendered them in this strange world. And their faces are seeds of glass within there, and then he doesn't go on to say what they are. But the seeds of glass almost to me sound like crystals. Now when you interact with a hollow terminus later, you come across an entity called Apollo that has a floating crystal inside of their head and inside of their shoulders, which makes you think, well, maybe he's on about the entities inside of this realm, these 16 entities that he's on about that are wearing weird glass faces. Perhaps they might be similar to what we see as Apollo. Maybe. Who knows? It's an odd one because he says Apollo at the end of that sentence, but he doesn't put any context or wrap any context around what Apollo is. And here's Apollo here. Now that does look like seeds of glass on his shoulders, but another thing to note is look at those freaking hands of his. Are they hands or is he dual wielding some sort of guns? Because they look like freaking guns to me. And yes, he looks very much combat ready. And if you had 16 of him chasing you around, yes, you'd be bricking yourself in the same way that Artemis is, for sure. But yeah, those little diamonds on his shoulders and the back of his head shining through his faceplate that looks like it's made of glass. Yeah, that kind of feels like what Artemis is describing. So maybe calling out Apollo's name at the end wasn't saying we should talk to Apollo, but maybe Apollo is what was chasing him. Who knows, because there's too many Kazerts going on there. But yeah, there's so many different sort of questions from all this lore that just don't overly get answered. Anyway, I'll leave you to read a little bit of Apollo's dialogue here. And the funny thing is, he actually says the answer is just what it is. And it's like, well, what the fudge is it? Can you spell it out for me? Because, yeah, I would need it spelling out for me. Because if I had to guess, I'd say you're the bad guy with your hand-mounted cannons, which is freaking strange. And yes, you being their last word, usually if somebody screams out a name, it's not because that person is the person that you need to go and talk to. It's because they're the person that freaking murdercated them. Heck yes. That's my sort of thoughts and feelings on this. This guy looks like a bad guy, acts like a bad guy. I mean, he's talking like a bounty hunter. At the same time, he's talking about wiping out the Sentinels, which are trying to protect the Atlas. And it makes you wonder, are we working for the Atlas? Is the Atlas the Crimson Liar that Nada is saying? Should we trust the Atlas? Should we trust this guy? Should we even be going through portals in the first place? There's so many different questions that this one quest line throws up that just don't get answered during the actual quest line. And there's so many sort of endpoints in the lore that could be speculated and sort of taken off on different tangents in different directions or read between the lines. And there could be multiple outcomes. Just me reading this, there's multiple outcomes. Do I trust this guy? Is he the guy that actually chased Artemis in the first place? It's hard to say. It really is. But he acts like he knows Artemis. But then if he did just go and murdercate him, yeah, maybe he does know Artemis. Who freaking knows? Anyway, if you've got ideas of your own, please put them in the comments. Or maybe I've missed something. But yeah, I honestly really don't know whether we should be trusting Apollo or whether we should trust Polo on the actual, or Nada on the actual space anomaly. It's a bit of an odd one. Now, there's also these abandoned terminals. Now, they mention the Crimson, and they also mention it as an actual living place and an actual planet as well. So it's a little bit strange when you read all the abandoned lore and they talk of the world of glass as an actual physical place that can cut you. And it's got some sort of way of cutting you without you realising that you're bleeding out. It's a very scary place, filled with very scary entities, not just 16. They mention almost like there's a lot of them in there. Yeah. So yeah, if you read the actual lore, it's a little bit crazy what's in there. Now you see that little red box on the floor where you usually get some stuff out of? It's got a little pattern on it. I know it's hard to see because it's behind the actual message text there, but you can see it's got some sort of glyph writing text upon it. Just remember that sort of glyph writing text? Heck yes, because you see that throughout the whole of the verse anyway. It's not just on that box, it's on countless boxes, it's in countless places. But yeah, you're going to see it in a very unusual place in a bit, and I think you're going to guess where, because I mentioned it earlier. It's on a frickin' Sentinel dog! Heck yes it is. So it does make you wonder whether the Sentinels are actually programmed in. Another thing to mention is all of this corruption, chums. So you see all this weird gangly mess that's inside the building and outside of the building? We now have infested planets. And those infested planets can infest actual planet types. So you could get an infested lush world or an infested frost world. It seems to be that this infestation from these abandoned places is spreading across the verse. Is that to do with the 1616? Is it to do with the void? Is it because we brought in the frickin' living ships? Who bloody knows? I don't know. Now we're talking to Apollo. And Apollo was saying that he used to be just like us, as an anomaly. However, all of his flesh was lost and he transferred over what was left into this shell, which is freaking horrific. And yes, he then says he took revenge when the time came. So this isn't a person that forgives or does forgiveness. This is a guy that is warmongering and crazy, in my opinion. And yes, he does have guns mounted to his freaking appendages. So yeah, I honestly think this dual-wielding crazy nutcase bugger is going to be a protagonist in future, is my sort of thoughts and feelings. I'm wondering whether we might even get different ship types appear other than the living ship, and maybe they're going to be piloted by beings like this, you know? Maybe they've created a whole freaking army of the dead travellers, hence why we see all these traveller graves all over planets all over the place, and they give us glyphs and things to get us to go through portals in a hope that maybe we get stuck in between realities and get mind arced up and turned into another traveller. It's almost like the freaking White Walkers from Game of Thrones. Heck yes. So here we go. Here's that Sentinel dog that I've been chatting about for a little while, and there you go. There's the little glyph markings on this actual Sentinel drone. Now, I just don't think if this was actually put together by another Sentinel that they'd bother putting little stamps on them like this. This almost has human engineering tied to it, or some sort of intelligence behind it that likes to mark its actual creations, you know? So I'm thinking maybe the Korvax did have something to do with the creation of all of these Sentinels. Or maybe it was the Atlas. I mean, the Atlas created the whole simulation, and we see this sort of weird text on pretty much everything that we come across. Take that, Sentinel drone! You're probably wondering how I'm doing this right now, Jums. I'm in creative mode. In creative mode, they don't attack. Heck no, they don't. So yeah, I fired up creative mode just to get all the story arc bits from the Artemis questline without having to get all the resources, just so I could get all this to pop up nice and quickly to make this video. Heck yes! So you can see here about the ley lines and how the ley lines are actually interlinked to the Sentinels' appearances on planet surfaces and how they can jump into iteration to iteration. I mean, we can summon in the anomaly from place to place whenever we like, and it makes you wonder, is it using the same space-time continuum that perhaps the Sentinels use? Now, it mentions here that the traveller awoke beneath the shadow of a red star. Well, I have initialized into this iteration quite a fair few times, and I'm fairly sure you don't start off under a red star, because that's a cadmium system, isn't it? It's usually a yellow star where you spawn under, because that makes no freaking sense. The only thing I can think of is, you know, when you get to your crashed ship, there's that like washing machine thing there, and the red sort of mass jumps out of it, and that's when the Atlas first spots you. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But then I'm also thinking, well, what if, you know, we are the opposite side of the realm of glass, and it is mentioning maybe the standby or power light. Who knows? But anyway, now we're over at another site. This is a relic site, an ancient relic site of a crashed civilization. In this case, it looks like it could be a Gek one, because it's got a giant freaking Gek head there. But it'd be nice to know what happened to the freaking body of that statue, or what it was mounted on, or how it even freaking got there. It'd be nice if there was bigger relic sort of sites or areas, or some sort of rhyme or reason to these ancient buildings. Are they the leftovers, the remnants of a great war? Perhaps. I mean, you do get that sort of feeling about them, but it's never really overly confirmed from the actual plaques and lore there. Righto, so here I am interacting with the actual monolith. Now, the monolith, like I say, would actually teach you an Atlas word at the end of solving a puzzle, which makes me think that these are placed by the Atlas. But yeah, that's the only sort of real link that we get there. However, this monolith is mentioning about the first traveller and the gift that was rejected from the Atlas. And it makes you wonder, well, who is the first traveller? Could it have been Apollo? Could it have been Artemis? I mean, Artemis has actually got the backpack on, you know, and looks like a proper anomaly. He even mentions that he severed his exosuit. However, when you speak to Apollo, there's no sort of, he doesn't even look like one of us guys, hasn't got an exo-droid on his shoulder, doesn't even mention about the exosuit, and doesn't know who Nada and Apollo is, and Nada and Apollo don't really know of Apollo or Null either. Yes, I just mentioned another name now, Null, but we will touch base with Null fairly soon. So Null is another person that looks a little bit like Apollo. It looks like a very sort of separated traveller, one with a grudge to bear as well, just like Apollo. So it makes me wonder whether there might be two antagonists. Righto, so here I am. I've now arrived at the final point, which is a portal. You can see there, breach, breach, breach. This time the text is in white and the actual separator's in red. And I'm wondering whether if you replace that breach, breach, breach with 1616, maybe 16 in code means breach. I don't know. But then there's also the hexadecimal and 16-bit and all that sort of stuff. And whether it's got some sort of reference to that being part of it. Considering we're in a program simulation, hexadecimal code and the number 16 sort of ties in. And technically, you could have a data breach. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Anyway, we're firing up the portal. We're going to go through the portal. Now, the opposite side of the portal is going to be an exotic planet. Now, the exotic planet appeared around the times of Visions, and they've been getting higher in number and frequency. We even have abandoned systems now that have quite a fair few of these sort of planets on, or strange infested planets. In fact, you get infested planets everywhere now, once we got the Origins update. So it seems to be the more alien planets are slowly spreading into the actual iteration. With every iteration that we get, every new update brings something new when it comes to freaky craziness into the actual verse. And it does feel like the corruption or this sort of breach is spreading and getting worse. And I suppose with the more and more players coming in and the more anomalies being detected, perhaps we are the virus. I mean, who knows? It could be any of these things, couldn't it, really? I mean, it's so vague and so open to interpretation that you can't really say that anybody's theory is incorrect, because it is so open to interpretation of the actual lore and the text and what's going on. It's beautifully crafted in that way that it actually allows for people to have their own idea of what's going on. I mean, look at that. That looks like a freaking crimson star. That looks like a giant red sort of thing that I could be birthed from. Heck yes it does, but it also looks like the thing found in that light washing machine near to the crashed ship right at the very start on the planet you spawn into. But yeah, it would make more sense if when you actually came into iteration you were born under a red star to all this text. But yeah, it's not. It's like a yellow or white one or whatever. It's definitely not a cadmium system. Righto, I'm trying to learn more words while I'm in here. Excellent. Now, another thing is, if the Atlas did create us, why not teach us its frickin' language so at least we can communicate with the dang thing? Because when you come up here, yeah, also, what the fudge? I mean, these look like little frickin' llamas on there. What the heck's going on there? That's a bit of an odd one, isn't it? Heck yes. Anyhow, we're gonna interact with this anyhows, and yeah, it almost feels like a Winamp sort of advert, doesn't it? So let's interact with this, and let's bring up what the Atlas has to say. So here we go. I'm going to leave you with what the Atlas has to say. Okay, at this point, just remember the null value there, and the fact that it said 64% of planets are operating at normal sort of parameters, and subroutine of glass is a little bit dodgy, isn't it? And it mentions about breach attempts there as well. So it does make you think, well, perhaps the Atlas knows about this realm of glass, and also the fact that 64% of the worlds are normal, however, a vast swathe of them are now abnormal, which is a little bit worrying. So there's all this sort of stuff going on here. Well, the Atlas is doing its self-diagnostics and trying to work out what the heck is going on. And we're still trying to work out what the heck is going on. Now, the only way that you get all this lore come up is by following the Atlas story path. And there hasn't been any juicy paths or stories added in really since this Artemis questline, and I'm really hoping that in a future update they add to this and we get to find out the answers to all these questions. Where do the Sentinels come from? Who created the Sentinels in the first place? Because we've got two different places that could have come from, the Atlas or Corvax. It's hard to say for sure. What is Artemis? And yeah, where did they get that gnarly freaking stuff from? I like that thing on its hand. I mean, it looks like something in a dark cloud. And how do we get that freaking backpack? Because it's freaking awesome. Yeah, where did Nada get his cape? Where did Polo get his freaking hoodie? But I mean, there's more important questions. Who the heck is Null? Who the heck is Apollo? And what do they have in common with each other, if anything? Are they going to be the new antagonists? Where did the living ships come from? Is the Void an actual place you can visit? Is the Realm of Glass a place that you can visit? Because at some stages it almost feels like it's the third wall, and other times it feels like it is an actual place because it's mentioned that it can actually cut you and it's inhabited by weird, crazy things. And also the 16. Is the 16 some sort of corruption in code, or is it 16 persons? Because Artemis mentions them as actual persons chasing him. I have no idea. So there's a lot of stuff in the lore, although that I love the lore and I quote the lore and I'm talking about the lore. Do I have the actual answers to the lore? No, I just have a shed load of freaking unanswered questions. That's what I have right now, chums. So it's a little bit of an odd one all round. So yeah, if you've got what you feel to be answers or even theories, I doubt people have got physical, full-on, bona fide concrete answers because it's so open-ended. So yeah, if you have theories, put them in the comments. That'd be much appreciated. Okay, so now we've got this translucent guy just standing right in front of us here that almost appears to be like some sort of hologram, and they're very much in line with the looks of Apollo and also Null with some of their head designs and things like that. A lot of the travellers look very much out of place in keeping with the rest of the actual inhabitants. Even the anomaly that you can choose don't look as crazy looking as the travellers. The travellers look very separated from this reality. And another thing is a little odd, is during the actual evolval of this game, Apollo created a traveller. You know Johnny 5, the Quicksilver synthesis robot? Yeah, he's not an anomaly. He's a traveller type bot that Apollo built out of spare parts, which makes you think, well, did he build all of these travellers' vessels that we're seeing walking about? Who knows? It's a little odd. Did they accidentally create an army that's sitting in the world of glass? And where does the anomaly go when it's not called into the iteration? You know, does it go back into the world of glass? We don't know. Can we trust Apollo or Nada? Don't know. Can we trust this guy? So this is Null. This is Null, and Null appears quite late into the Artemis questline. So I'm not going to show you a lot of the actual text or what happens next with good old Artemis and things like that. Because, yeah, you get given a mind arc and it's up to you what you want to do from there on in. So I'd leave that one up to you. But here we go. Look at the actual endpoints to this guy's arms. Now, are they guns or are they some sort of plug-in device for some sort of simulation or changes in reality, perhaps? Who knows? This guy looks like a walking frickin' junction box with a light bulb as a head, and I don't trust him one bit. Heck no. Him and Apollo, to me, just look very out of place. And remember, the Atlas said Null reference. Could Null be the first traveller? Could Null be what started the corruption? And Apollo even says he got vengeance against the person that moved them into the way that they are now. Are they talking about Null? Are these two rivals? Or could it be that Apollo and Null were the first travellers and went against the Atlas? Who knows? It's a very odd one, and I'm really unsure. But I'm wondering whether one of these guys, or both of these guys, are going to turn out to be the antagonists if we ever do get some sort of combat update. Because I'm just filled with mistrust on both of these. And I know that we're told that the Crimson Liar, the Atlas, is who we need to fear or not to trust. I just think that the Atlas is scared about this corruption and trying to stop impending doom. And I kind of feel that maybe these guys might be the harbingers of that impending doom. But then I also think, what if we are? What if we are the virus? I mean, we're called the anomaly right from the word go. But then why would the Atlas talk to us and ask us for our help if we were part of the actual problem itself? But then again, that's like saying, does a computer recognise that it's got a virus? Who knows? I mean, if it's self-replicating, they might just see it as a data strings and think, actually, that could be the solution. Who knows? It's a bit of an odd one, isn't it, to be fair? So there we go, chums. That's where I am with all of my questions that I have in current iteration. So you can see there, I'm quite confused, but at the same time quite intrigued, and that's why I love the lore in No Man's Sky, because it could go in multiple directions. It has so much potential. The lore has potential, the game has potential, and that's why No Man's Sky is freaking awesome in my opinion. But at the same time, I would like to get a few answers and some more questions perhaps. Heck yes, that'd be freaking ace. And yeah, I'd like to hear what you'd like to see in the iteration in the comments. Heck yes. I'll see you again soon. I have got a blooper coming up. So here is the blooper. So I was up here. I was trying to get the actual footage, which you did see. I've got some clean footage now. But you can see here that they're nicely animated, which I really wanted. I wanted this little clip where they're animated and moving and stuff. Someone throws me a game invite. I get stuck in the menu. I can't do nothing. I can't move that little round circle to go to decline. And then all of a sudden it lets me when I bring up the camera controls. Nightmare. I thought I was stuck. Yeah, so there we go. I'm turning those settings off. Heck yes, I am. And that's why you got some still footage rather than moving footage earlier in the video, chums. Anyway, you've been awesome. See you again soon, people. Goodbye, goodbye, and goodbye again. I want to say a massive, great big thank you for watching. If you like what you see, please like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And thank you to my backers over on Patreon and on YouTube membership. If you do want to support this channel, you could just not skip my adverts. That throws revenue down my avenue. Or stay with Captain Steve a little bit longer and hit something on this screen. Heck yes, and there's also merch on this screen now. Awesome!